The sound of the judge's gavel cracked through the courtroom like a bolt of lightning. Bang, the sharp noise echoed against the walls, vibrating through my chest. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the old yellow envelope resting in my lap. 13 years. Ha, 13 long years, 13 birthdays, 13 Christmas mornings, 13 years of scraped knees, school lunches, fevers, nightmares, graduations, and tears. And now somehow everything had come down to this moment. My name is Alina Vance. I am 67 years old, and today my own daughter is trying to destroy me. I sat quietly at the defense table while dozens of eyes stared in my direction. Some were curious, some were sympathetic, others had already decided I was guilty. Across the courtroom sat my daughter, Valerie, my only child. My greatest joy and my deepest heartbreak. She wore an expensive navy blue suit. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup was flawless. Anyone looking at her would see a successful woman, a respectable woman, a loving mother. But appearances can be dangerous things, especially in court. Beside her sat a confident attorney reviewing documents. He looked relaxed, comfortable, certain of victory. As if the truth was already on his side, I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because if there was one thing life had taught me, it was that the truth rarely looked the way people expected. The judge adjusted his glasses. His tired eyes moved between Valerie and me. "Mrs. Valerie Vance," he said. Valerie stood. Immediately tears filled her eyes, a perfect performance, or maybe real tears. After all these years, I honestly didn't know anymore. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembled. "My mother has kept my children away from me for 13 years. Murmurs spread across the courtroom. I felt dozens of heads turned toward me. Valerie continued. "She took advantage of a vulnerable period in my life and refused to return them." Her voice cracked. "I've missed birthdays, holidays, precious moments no mother should ever lose." The attorney placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The audience looked moved. Several people nodded sympathetically. I remained silent because I knew something they didn't. The truth doesn't need to rush. The truth can wait. The truth survives. The attorney stood. "Your Honor, this case involves parental alienation and unlawful custody retention." His words were polished, carefully chosen, dangerous. "My client suffered from severe emotional difficulties years ago and temporarily entrusted her children to her mother." He pointed toward me. But temporary care became permanent control. The courtroom became quiet, very quiet. The judge turned toward me. "Mrs. Vance," my heart skipped. "Do you understand the accusations being made against you?" I slowly stood. My knees protested. Arthritis had become my constant companion over the years. Still, I managed. "Yes, Your Honor." "And how do you respond?" I looked directly at Valerie. For a moment, I didn't see the woman sitting there. I saw the little girl who used to run through sprinklers during summer afternoons, the teenager who cried after her first heartbreak, the young mother who once begged me for help. Then reality returned. "I did not steal anyone's children." My voice was calm, steady, but I did raise 3 children who were left behind. A collective gasp moved through the room. Valerie immediately shook her head. "No," her voice rose. "That's not true." The judge lifted a hand. "Order." Valerie sat down again, but her eyes never left mine. The anger inside them burned. The same anger I had seen many years ago whenever she was caught doing something she shouldn't. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Vance, are you saying your daughter abandoned her children?" I looked down at the yellow envelope, the envelope that had lived inside my closet for 13 years, the envelope that contained memories. Evidence, secrets, pain, the envelope that could destroy what remained of my relationship with my daughter or save my grandchildren from losing everything. I swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor." The room exploded into whispers. The judge struck his gavel again. Bang, silence returned. Valerie looked pale now, very pale, almost frightened. Interesting, because innocent people usually don't look frightened when someone tells the truth. The attorney stood again. "Your Honor, these are serious allegations unsupported by evidence." I slowly raised the envelope. The entire courtroom watched, even the judge's eyes narrowed. "This," I said quietly, "is my evidence." For the first time, genuine panic crossed Valerie's face. Not sadness, not anger, fear, real fear. "Mom," her voice barely emerged, "please don't." The room became still. I looked at her. For a brief moment, I almost gave in. Almost, because despite everything, she was still my daughter. The baby I had once held in my arms, the little girl whose nightmares I chased away, the child I loved, a child who had grown into someone I barely recognized. I closed my eyes, then opened them again. No. The truth deserved a voice, especially after 13 years. "Don't what?" I asked softly. Valerie lowered her gaze, her hands trembled. The attorney quickly interrupted. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant emotional manipulation." "Is it?" I asked. The attorney frowned. "Excuse me?" I looked directly at him. "Tell me, counselor, would you consider 13 years of silence relevant?" No answer. "Would you consider 13 years without child support relevant?" Still no answer. Would you consider 13 years without a single birthday card relevant? The attorney's jaw tightened. I turned back toward the judge. Your Honor, for 13 years I waited. My voice began to shake, not from fear, from exhaustion. Every Christmas I hoped she would call. Every birthday I hoped she would appear. Every school event I looked at the door. Nothing, nobody came. The courtroom listened. Completely silent, I continued. Instead, I was there when Arthur had nightmares, when Emily got sick, when Andrea cried herself to sleep asking where Mommy was. My voice cracked. That memory still hurt, even now after all these years. The judge removed his glasses. He seemed affected. Even Valerie looked away, perhaps because she remembered, or perhaps because she didn't want to. The judge cleared his throat. Mrs. Vance, yes, Your Honor, I want to understand everything. His voice softened. Start from the beginning. The beginning, the beginning. Funny how one simple phrase can reopen wounds that never truly healed. I closed my eyes. The courtroom faded, the wooden benches disappeared, the judge disappeared, the lawyers disappeared, and suddenly I was 13 years younger, back in my tiny house, back on a rainy October afternoon, back on the day my life changed forever. The rain had been falling since morning, soft at first, then harder. I remember standing in my kitchen making chamomile tea. My arthritis was acting up. The doctor had just informed me that it would probably worsen with age. Wonderful news, I lived alone. My husband had passed away years earlier. Retirement wasn't glamorous. Money was tight, but life was peaceful, quiet, predictable. Then came the knock, 3 loud knocks, bang, bang, bang. I remember thinking it was strange. Nobody visited unexpectedly, especially not during a storm. I opened the door and froze. Standing there was Valerie, soaked from the rain. Behind her stood 3 children, Arthur, Emily, Andrea. My grandchildren, but something felt wrong, terribly wrong. Arthur's clothes were dirty. Emily looked exhausted. Little Andrea was crying. Their faces were pale, hungry, scared. My stomach dropped. Valerie, she forced a smile. Hi, Mom. Something in her voice immediately frightened me. What's happened? She looked away. Nothing. A lie, a terrible lie. Even then I knew. I stepped aside. Come inside. The children rushed in immediately. The moment they entered the warm house, little Andrea wrapped herself around my leg. I remember touching her hair. It felt tangled, unwashed. My heart broke instantly. Valerie carried a small plastic bag, that was all. 1 bag, 3 children. 1 bag, I stared at it, confused. Then Valerie said the words that would change everything. Mom, her voice shook. I need you to keep them for a little while. A cold feeling spread through my chest. What do you mean, just a few weeks? She avoided my eyes. I need to sort some things out. I looked at the children, then back at her. What things? No answer. Financial problems? Silence. Relationship problems? Nothing. Are you in danger? She shook her head just once. No, then she grabbed her purse and started backing toward the door. My pulse accelerated. Valerie, the children noticed. Arthur noticed first. Mom, Emily looked confused. Little Andrea began crying harder. Valerie opened the front door. Rain rushed inside. Mom, Arthur repeated. Fear filled his voice. Then Valerie kissed each child quickly, too quickly, as if she couldn't bear to stay longer. And then she turned around and walked into the storm. Arthur ran toward the window. Mom, Emily joined him. Mommy, Andrea screamed. The taxi pulled away. The rain swallowed everything, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly afraid because deep inside, I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know that the next 13 years would prove exactly how wrong I was, and what I would discover weeks later about Valerie's disappearance would shock everyone, including me. The rain kept falling long after Valerie disappeared. I stood frozen beside the window, waiting, just waiting. Surely she would come back, right? What mother leaves 3 children and simply disappears? There had to be an explanation. There had to be. Arthur pressed his small hands against the glass. His eyes searched the dark road. Every passing car made him sit up straighter. Every set of headlights gave him hope. And every time those lights passed our house, that hope died a little more. Grandma, his voice was tiny, fragile. When is Mommy coming back? Oh, that question. Even now, 13 years later, I can still hear it. I forced a smile. The kind adults use when they're trying not to fall apart. Soon, sweetheart, Arthur nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Children know more than we give them credit for. They can feel fear. They can sense lies. And at that moment, fear filled every corner of my house. Little Andrea sat in my lap. Her cheeks were wet from crying. Every few minutes, she looked toward the door. Mommy, then she started crying again. Emily was quieter. That worried me more. Children usually cry when they're hurt, but sometimes they become silent, and silence can be much more dangerous. She sat on the couch hugging a worn stuffed rabbit, not saying a word, not moving. Just staring at the front door, waiting, all 3 of them waiting, and so was I. Hours passed. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, nothing, no phone call, no text message, no knock on the door, nothing. I finally took the children into the kitchen. Who's hungry? The moment I asked, Arthur's eyes lit up, then quickly dimmed, as if he was embarrassed. That broke my heart. Children shouldn't feel embarrassed about being hungry. I opened my refrigerator, not much inside. Retirement didn't leave room for luxury, but there was enough soup, bread, milk, some fruit. The children ate like they hadn't seen food in days. That was the moment my concern became fear. Arthur finished 2 bowls. Emily ate so quickly she started coughing. Andrea drank her milk without taking a breath. I sat there watching them, a terrible thought growing inside my mind. How long had it been since they'd eaten properly? When dinner was finished, I helped them take baths. That was when I noticed more things, things that made my stomach twist. Andrea's pajamas were too small. Emily had a bruise on her knee that looked untreated. Arthur's shoes had holes in the soles. Oh no, 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 something was terribly wrong. That night I put all 3 children in my spare bedroom. It wasn't much, just 2 small beds, an old dresser, a faded lamp, but it was warm, safe. And for the first time all day, the children looked calm. I tucked Andrea into bed. She grabbed my wrist hard. Grandma, yes, sweetheart, Mommy's coming back tomorrow. I froze, my throat tightened. Maybe the answer sounded weak even to me. Andrea smiled, a small, hopeful smile, then she closed her eyes. 5 minutes later, she was asleep, exhausted, completely exhausted. Children shouldn't be that tired, I knew it. Emily fell asleep next, still holding her stuffed rabbit, still facing the door, still waiting. Arthur stayed awake longest. I found him sitting by the window, watching the road. Arthur, he didn't move. Buddy, nothing. Then finally he spoke. She left before. I felt cold. What do you mean? He kept staring outside. Sometimes Mommy left us alone. My heart stopped. How long? He shrugged. I don't know. His voice cracked. Sometimes all day. Oh God. I sat beside him, trying to stay calm, trying not to show what I was feeling. What happened when she left? Arthur lowered his head. I took care of my sisters, a 7-year-old child taking care of 2 younger children. I wanted to cry, I wanted to scream. Instead, I hugged him, and for the first time that day, Arthur broke. He sobbed against my shoulder, not like a child, like someone who had been carrying too much weight for too long. Like someone finally allowed to be 7 years old again. That night I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I sat at the kitchen table, waiting, listening, praying. Every sound made me jump. Every car outside made my heart race. Midnight came, then 1 o'clock, then 2, still nothing. By sunrise, reality had started creeping into my thoughts. What if she wasn't coming back? No, impossible. Valerie wasn't perfect, but she was still a mother, wasn't she? Morning arrived. The children woke up. The first thing Andrea asked was, "Did Mommy come back?" My heart shattered. No, sweetheart. Her face fell immediately. A child shouldn't have to learn disappointment that young. The second day passed, no call. The third day passed, nothing. By day 4, I started calling everyone. Friends, former coworkers, old neighbors, anyone who might know where Valerie was. Nobody had seen her. Nobody knew anything. It was as if she had vanished, gone. Completely gone. On the 5th day, I visited her apartment. The children stayed with my neighbor. The drive felt endless. My hands shook the entire way. Please be there. Please, please, please. I repeated those words 100 times. When I arrived, my heart sank. The apartment was empty. Not empty as in nobody home. Empty as in abandoned. Furniture gone, boxes gone, everything gone. I stood in the doorway, unable to breathe. A landlord approached me. A woman in her 60s, kind eyes, concerned expression. "You a leaner?" I nodded. "Valerie's mother?" "Yes," the woman sighed, a long, heavy sigh. "Oh dear." Immediately I knew, whatever she was about to say, I wasn't going to like it. "Your daughter moved out 3 days ago." 3 days, exactly the same day she left the children. The same day, my knees nearly gave out. Did she leave a forwarding address? No. A phone number? No. Anything, the woman hesitated. Then handed me a small plastic box. She left some things behind. I opened it. Photos, receipts, old papers, random junk, nothing useful, or so I thought, because hidden beneath those papers was something that would later change everything. Something I wouldn't understand until years later, but at that moment I was too overwhelmed to notice. I drove home in silence. The children greeted me at the door, hope immediately filling their faces. The sight nearly destroyed me because they thought I had found her, and I hadn't, not even close. Days became weeks, weeks became months. No calls, no letters, no birthday cards, nothing. Every night I checked the mailbox. Every morning I checked the phone. Every holiday I waited. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Then one evening, nearly 2 months after Valerie disappeared, Arthur approached me. He looked older somehow. More serious, more tired. He sat beside me. "Grandma?" "Yes." His next words nearly broke me. "You don't have to pretend anymore." I stared at him. "What?" He swallowed hard, then whispered, "Mom isn't coming back, is she?" Oh God, the wisdom in children's pain is unbearable. I couldn't answer. I couldn't, because if I said yes, his heart would break, and if I said no, I would be lying. Arthur nodded slowly, as if my silence told him everything. Then he stood up, walked toward his sisters, and wrapped his arms around them, protecting them, just like he always did. But what none of us knew, what none of us could possibly imagine, was that Valerie wasn't simply gone. She wasn't lost, she wasn't searching for a better life, and she wasn't planning to return because hundreds of miles away, my daughter was building an entirely new life, a new home, a new future, and eventually, a new family. One that didn't include the 3 children she had left behind. The proof of that heartbreaking truth would arrive sooner than any of us expected, and when it did, the damage would be impossible to ignore. 3 months, 92 days. That's how long it had been since Valerie disappeared. 92 mornings without a phone call, 92 nights of unanswered questions, 92 days of watching 3 children slowly realize their mother wasn't coming back. People always talk about heartbreak as if it happens in a single moment. They're wrong. Heartbreak happens slowly, one disappointment at a time, one unanswered phone call, one empty birthday chair, one broken promise after another. And every day I watched it happen to my grandchildren. The hardest part wasn't feeding them. It wasn't paying bills. It wasn't even finding room in my tiny house. The hardest part was answering their questions. Questions I couldn't answer myself. Where is mommy? When will she call? Does she miss us? Did we do something wrong? Oh, those questions. Every single one felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. One evening, Emily climbed onto my lap while I was folding laundry. She was only 5 years old, tiny, fragile, still innocent enough to believe adults knew everything. Grandma, yes, sweetheart, she hesitated. Then asked quietly if mommy loved us. Why did she leave? I stopped folding immediately. For several seconds I couldn't speak because the truth was complicated, the truth was painful. And the truth wasn't something a 5-year-old should have to carry. I gently brushed her hair back. Sometimes adults make terrible mistakes. She stared at me. Because they're mean? No. Because they're bad? No. Then why? I sighed. A long, exhausted sigh. Because sometimes people are broken in ways they don't know how to fix. Emily seemed to think about that, then nodded, but I could see she wasn't satisfied. Neither was I. The next few months became a blur. School registrations, doctor appointments, legal paperwork, counseling sessions, endless forms, endless questions, endless responsibilities. One morning, the school counselor called me. Her voice sounded concerned, very concerned. Mrs. Vance, yes, we need to discuss Arthur. My heart immediately dropped. What happened? The counselor hesitated. He's sleeping in class. Oh no, when I arrived at school later that day, Arthur sat quietly in the counselor's office. His head lowered, shoulders tense. The counselor explained everything. Arthur wasn't sleeping because he was lazy. He wasn't staying up late playing games. He wasn't misbehaving. He was having nightmares every night, the same nightmare. Over and over again, his mother leaving, again and again and again. The counselor left us alone. I sat beside him. Buddy, Arthur wiped his eyes. I'm fine. The biggest lie children tell. I put my arm around him. No, you're not. For a moment he tried to stay strong, then everything came out. I should have stopped her. The words stunned me. What? Arthur began crying, hard, violently, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep inside. I should have stopped her. You were 7. I should have grabbed her. You were 7. I should have made her stay. His voice cracked. Maybe she would have loved us then. Oh God, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. A 7-year-old boy blaming himself for his mother's abandonment. I hugged him tightly, so tightly. You listened to me. He looked up, tears everywhere. You did nothing wrong, but she left. Yes, his face crumpled. Then why? I had no answer. Not yet, but I would soon. Because fate has a strange way of revealing truths when you're least prepared. About 6 months after Valerie disappeared, something happened, something unexpected. Something that changed everything. I was sorting through old mail one afternoon when the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Almost. Thank God I didn't. Hello? A woman answered. Mrs. Alina Vance? Yes, my name is Susan Carter. I frowned. I don't think we know each other. We don't. She paused, then continued. But I know your daughter. The room instantly became silent. My pulse doubled. What? I know Valerie. I stood up so quickly my chair nearly tipped over. Where is she? No answer. Please. My voice broke. Please tell me. Susan sighed heavily, and suddenly I knew whatever she was about to say wasn't good. Mrs. Vance, her voice softened. I don't think your daughter intends to come back. The world stopped. What? Susan continued carefully. I recently worked with Valerie. I gripped the phone tighter. Worked where? Phoenix. Phoenix. Over 1,000 miles away. My knees nearly gave out. Phoenix. She hadn't just left. She had run. Far away, very far away. Susan continued. I saw a family photo on her desk. My heartbeat thundered. Family photo, family. Photo? What family? The silence that followed felt endless. Then Susan answered. A man. I closed my eyes. A husband. My breathing became uneven. And a baby boy. Oh no, 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 no. My daughter had started over completely. A new life, a new family, a new child. While Arthur cried himself to sleep, while Emily wondered if she was unloved, while Andrea waited by windows, my hands started shaking. Hard, very hard. Susan's voice softened. I'm sorry, but I barely heard her, because in that moment, Something inside me changed forever. Not hatred, not revenge, something colder, something stronger, acceptance. The acceptance that Valerie hadn't gotten lost. She hadn't been searching for herself. She hadn't been trying to heal. She had chosen, and her choice hadn't included her children. That night I sat alone after everyone went to bed, looking through old family photographs. Valerie as a little girl, Valerie graduating high school, Valerie holding baby Arthur, Valerie smiling, laughing, dreaming, ha. Where had that girl gone? Who had this woman become? And more importantly, would my grandchildren survive the truth if they ever learned it? Unfortunately, life wasn't finished hurting them yet, because only a few months later, the first birthday arrived without their mother, and none of us were prepared for what would happen next. Birthdays are supposed to be happy. They're supposed to be filled with laughter, cake, presents, smiles, but Arthur's 8th birthday felt different, heavy. Painful, incomplete. The signs started early, weeks before his birthday. Every day he checked the mailbox, every single day, hope shining in his eyes, hope I couldn't bear to destroy. One afternoon I finally asked, "Arthur?" He froze. What are you looking for?" He lowered his head. "Nothing." That answer told me everything. Later that evening, I found a folded piece of paper hidden beneath his mattress. A letter, written in childish handwriting, addressed to Valerie. "Dear Mom, my birthday is next week. I hope you come. I miss you. Love, Arthur O." I sat on the edge of my bed and cried, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like someone mourning something already gone, the birthday arrived. The children decorated the dining room. Balloons, streamers, paper hats. Andrea was excited. Emily tried to act excited. Arthur pretended. Pretending became his specialty. The party started. Friends arrived. Neighbors arrived. Cake arrived. Everything should have been perfect, but there was one thing missing. One person, one empty chair, the chair near the window, the chair Arthur kept looking at every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every time the doorbell rang. Hope, disappointment, hope. Disappointment again, again, again. Finally, the cake arrived. Everyone gathered around, candles glowing, the room filled with smiles. "Make a wish," children shouted. Arthur closed his eyes for several seconds, longer than normal, much longer. Then he blew out the candles. Everyone cheered, but I saw something nobody else noticed. A tear, one single tear, sliding down his cheek. He wiped it away immediately, trying to hide it, trying to be brave. Trying to be the man he thought he needed to become. At 8 years old, 8, that night after everyone left, I found him sitting alone, the decorations still hanging around us, the house finally quiet. "Did you have fun?" He nodded. "Yeah, a lie, not entirely, but still a lie." I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "She forgot." The words nearly destroyed me. "No, yes," his voice cracked. "She forgot my birthday." I couldn't argue. Because she had no card, no call, no message, nothing. Arthur stared at the floor, then asked the question I had dreaded for months. "Grandma, yes, do you think she loves her new family more?" Oh God. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot, too painful. I took a deep breath, then another and another. Finally, I answered, "I think your mother made terrible choices." He looked at me. "But does she love them more?" I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know, and because some questions don't have answers that heal, only answers that hurt. Arthur nodded slowly, as if he understood, as if he already knew. Then he stood, walked toward his bedroom, stopped at the doorway, and said something that would haunt me for years. "If she comes back someday," his voice trembled, "I don't know if I'll want her to." Then he disappeared into his room, leaving me alone, alone with a truth I had been avoiding. The children weren't waiting anymore, not like before. The hope was fading, and where hope disappears, something else often takes its place. Anger, resentment, pain, the kind that lasts for years. But what none of us knew was that hundreds of miles away, Valerie was about to make a decision that would prove she wasn't merely absent from her children's lives, she was actively erasing them. And when the evidence finally reached my hands, even I would struggle to believe it. The first Christmas without Valerie was harder than I expected, not because I missed her. No, the truth was much more painful. I missed the person she used to be. Those are two very different things. Outside, snow covered the streets like a soft white blanket. Inside, I tried my best to make the house feel magical. The children deserved that. They deserved at least one place where disappointment wasn't waiting around every corner. I decorated every room, hung lights, wrapped presents, baked cookies, played Christmas music. I worked harder than I had in years. Anything to make them smile, anything to help them forget. But grief has a way of sneaking into celebrations, especially when empty chairs are involved. On Christmas Eve, I noticed something strange. Arthur wasn't excited, not really. He smiled when his sisters smiled. He laughed when others laughed, but something was missing. Hope, the last little piece of hope. That night, after Emily and Andrea went to sleep, Arthur found me sitting near the Christmas tree. The lights reflected in his eyes. For a moment, he looked much older than 8. "Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart." He sat beside me, quiet, very quiet. Then he asked, "Can I tell you something without making you sad?" My heart immediately tightened. "You can tell me anything." He looked at the floor. "I don't think I love her anymore." The room became silent. The Christmas lights blinked softly, red, blue, green, red, blue, green. And all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Arthur, his eyes filled with tears. I tried, his voice cracked. I really tried. Oh God, I wrapped my arms around him, but he kept talking. I waited, tears rolled down his cheeks. I waited every day, more tears. I waited on my birthday, another tear. I waited at school, then another, and she never came. The pain in his voice felt unbearable. This wasn't anger, this wasn't hatred, this was heartbreak. Pure heartbreak, the kind that changes a person forever. I held him as he cried, and for the first time I realized something. The children weren't losing their mother anymore. They had already lost her. What they were losing now was the memory of her. That hurt even more. The next morning was Christmas. Emily screamed with excitement when she saw the presents. Andrea nearly tackled the Christmas tree trying to reach hers. For a few precious hours, they looked like normal children again. Laughing, running, playing, being kids. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Everyone froze, every single person, Arthur especially. His eyes widened. For one terrible second, hope returned. The same hope that had hurt him before. The same hope that refused to die. Ding dong. Again, Arthur jumped up. Maybe it's Mom. The words hit me like a punch. Oh no, not again, not this. Not today. Before I could stop him, he ran to the door. Emily followed. Andrea followed. All three children racing toward another possible disappointment. I opened the door. A delivery driver stood outside. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a delivery. Arthur's face collapsed instantly. The pain was so visible it nearly broke me. The driver handed me a package, then left. Arthur turned away, silent, defeated, and that's when I noticed something unusual. The package had no return address, no sender name, nothing, just my address. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Slowly, I carried it inside. The children gathered around. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo album, that's all. A photo album, old, worn, dusty. I frowned, confused. Then I opened it and nearly dropped it. Every photograph inside had been removed. Every single one, empty spaces, empty pages, empty memories, but on the very last page. There was something else, a small note written in Valerie's handwriting. My hands immediately started shaking, hard, very hard, because I hadn't seen her handwriting in nearly a year. The children looked at me. What is it? I couldn't answer. Not immediately. The note was short, only one sentence, but it sent chills down my spine. It read, "Some memories are better forgotten." Oh no, 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 no. The room felt colder, much colder. Why would Valerie send this? Why remove every photograph? Why erase every memory? And most importantly, what exactly was she trying to forget? Because deep down, I knew this wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This was a message, a deliberate message. And I had a feeling something far bigger was hiding beneath the surface, something that would finally reveal what Valerie had been doing all this time. Unfortunately, I was right, because only a few weeks later, a phone call would arrive that changed everything we thought we knew. 3 weeks passed after Christmas, 3 long weeks. The mysterious photo album stayed locked inside my bedroom drawer. I couldn't stop thinking about it, neither could Arthur. Every few days he'd ask the same question. Why would Mom send that? And every time I gave the same answer. I don't know, because I didn't, at least not yet, but answers were coming, fast. One rainy afternoon, the phone rang. I almost ignored it again. Lately, unknown numbers had become my enemy. Most were telemarketers, wrong numbers, scammers, nothing important, but something told me to answer. And thank God I did. "Hello?" a woman's voice responded. "Mrs. Alina Vance speaking. This is Karen Mitchell." The name meant nothing at first. Then she added, "We worked together years ago." Suddenly I remembered Karen, an old coworker, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years. What a surprise! My smile faded quickly because Karen didn't sound happy. She sounded nervous, very nervous. "Mrs. Vance," the hesitation in her voice frightened me. "I think you need to sit down." Nobody likes hearing those words. Nobody. Slowly I sat. "What happened?" Karen inhaled deeply, then dropped a bombshell. "I saw Valerie." Everything inside me froze. "What?" "I saw her." My pulse exploded. "When's?" "Last weekend." My hands tightened around the phone. "Where?" Karen answered immediately. "Colorado, Colorado, another state, another new location, another lie." I struggled to breathe. What was she doing there? The silence that followed felt endless. Then Karen answered. She was with her family. Family, that word again, the same word, the same knife, twisting deeper. "What family?" Karen hesitated. Then finally said, "Her husband." I closed my eyes. "Go on." "And her son." "Son." The room spun. Even though I already knew about the boy, hearing it again hurt a lot, because every confirmation made it more real, more permanent. More devastating. Karen wasn't finished, not even close. There was something else. My stomach dropped. "What?" Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "She introduced herself as someone else." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Karen's answer shocked me. She wasn't using the name Valerie Vance. Silence, absolute silence. Then Karen continued. "She introduced herself as Valerie Dawson, her husband's surname, completely understandable." Except for one thing, one very important thing. According to Karen, Valerie never mentioned having three other children. Not once, not a single time, to her neighbors, to friends, to coworkers, to anyone. It was as if Arthur, Emily, and Andrea had never existed. Oh my God, the realization hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just absent, she wasn't just distant, she wasn't just hiding, she was rewriting history. Erasing people, erasing her own children, the same way those photographs had disappeared from the album, the same way memories had been removed, the same way she had vanished. Suddenly everything made sense: the album, the note. The silence, the disappearance, the new identity. She wasn't running from her past, she was deleting it, and the more I learned, the more terrified I became, because people willing to erase their own children from their lives are capable of things most of us can't even imagine. That night after the children fell asleep, I opened the old photo album again. Slowly, carefully, page by page, empty spaces stared back at me, missing faces, missing moments, missing memories. Then something caught my eye. Something I hadn't noticed before, a tiny folded piece of paper hidden inside the back cover. My heart instantly started racing. Funny how life works. Sometimes the biggest secrets hide in the smallest places. Slowly, I unfolded the paper, and the moment I saw what was written there, my blood turned cold because it wasn't a note, it wasn't a letter, it wasn't a message, it was a list written entirely in Valerie's handwriting. And beside each item, there were check marks, including one line that made my hands tremble: remove old family photos, close old accounts, start fresh. Then came the final line, the line that would haunt me for years. The line I would never forget: never look back. I stared at those words, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe, because for the first time, I wasn't wondering where Valerie had gone. I wasn't wondering if she would return. I wasn't wondering what happened. For the first time, I realized the terrifying truth. My daughter hadn't gotten lost. My daughter had made a plan, and if that plan was real, then what I discovered next might be even worse than abandonment itself. I couldn't sleep, not after finding that list, not after reading those words: remove old family photos, close old accounts, start fresh, never look back. Every time I closed my eyes, those check marks appeared again. Cold, calculated, deliberate. This wasn't the behavior of someone who made a mistake. This wasn't a confused mother. This wasn't a woman having a temporary crisis. No. This looked like a plan, a carefully organized plan, and that realization terrified me. The next morning I woke up exhausted. My head hurt, my chest felt heavy, but life doesn't stop when you're heartbroken. Breakfast still needed to be made, school still happened, bills still arrived, children still needed love, so I pushed my feelings aside, like I always did, for years. The children left for school, the house became quiet, too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that folded paper, again and again and again. Then something caught my attention. A tiny note scribbled near the bottom corner, so small I had missed it before. I grabbed my reading glasses, leaning closer. My heart immediately started racing. There was an address, a real address, written beneath the checklist: Colorado. Oh my God. For months I had been searching blindly. Now suddenly I had a destination, an actual place, a real clue. My hands shook. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to throw the paper away. Because deep down I knew something. Finding answers doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes answers hurt more than questions, but I had to know. I needed to know, not for myself, for the children, for Arthur, for Emily, for Andrea. They deserved the truth, even if that truth broke all of us. A week later, I used nearly all my savings: plane ticket, hotel room, rental car. The money disappeared faster than I expected. Retirement funds weren't exactly endless. But I couldn't stop now, not after coming this far. I told the children I was visiting an old friend. A lie, a necessary lie. Because what mother figure tells three abandoned children she's hunting for the woman who left them? So I smiled, packed a suitcase, and flew to Colorado. The entire flight my stomach churned. Fear, anger, hope, resentment, everything mixed together. When the plane landed, I sat there for several moments, unable to move. This was it, the moment I'd imagined hundreds of times, the moment I'd prayed for, the moment I'd feared. Finally, I stepped off the plane. 3 hours later, I stood across the street from the address on Valerie's list. My heart nearly stopped, because there it was, a beautiful house, large front yard, white fence, flower garden, children's toys scattered across the lawn. A perfect family home, the kind of home people put on Christmas cards, the kind of home my grandchildren never had. The sight made me sick. Slowly, I parked across the street, watching, waiting. My hands trembling against the steering wheel. Then the front door opened, and everything changed. Valerie stepped outside. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 13 months since I'd last seen her. And there she was, alive, healthy, happy. Happy, the word burned inside my chest. She wasn't struggling, she wasn't suffering, she wasn't trying to rebuild her life. She looked wonderful, beautiful clothes, bright smile, perfect hair, perfect house, perfect life. The exact opposite of the picture she'd painted before disappearing. Then another figure appeared beside her. A man, tall, confident, handsome, her husband, Javier. He wrapped an arm around her waist. She laughed, actually laughed. The sound reached me through the open window, and I felt something inside me crack, not because she had moved on, but because she looked happier than she'd ever looked with her own children. Then the front door opened again. And a little boy came running outside, maybe 4 years old, blonde hair, bright smile, tiny sneakers. He jumped into Valerie's arms. Mommy, oh no, 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 the word hit me harder than anything else. Mommy. He called her mommy and she smiled. She smiled exactly the way she used to smile at Arthur. At Emily, at Andrea, the same smile, the same love, the same warmth, the same mother, except this child got to keep her. My grandchildren didn't. Tears filled my eyes, hot, painful, uncontrollable. I watched them play in the yard like a perfect little family, like the past had never happened, like 3 children weren't waiting hundreds of miles away wondering why they weren't enough. Then something happened that nearly made me scream. A neighbor walked over, an older woman carrying groceries. Valerie greeted her warmly. The neighbor smiled, then looked toward the little boy. What a wonderful family, Valerie beamed proudly. Thank you, the neighbor continued. You're such a devoted mother. And Valerie didn't correct her. She didn't mention Arthur. She didn't mention Emily. She didn't mention Andrea. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The lie continued. The erasure continued, the betrayal continued, and for the first time, I realized something horrifying. She wasn't hiding her past, she was replacing it completely. That evening, I returned to my hotel room, broken, exhausted, devastated. But what I discovered the next morning would prove things were even worse than I imagined, because Valerie hadn't simply abandoned her children. She had created an entirely different story about who she was. And that story was built on a mountain of lies. The next morning, I made a decision I wasn't proud of, but one I felt I had to make. I needed answers, real answers, not assumptions, not guesses, the truth. So I returned to Valerie's neighborhood, this time on foot, walking slowly, trying not to attract attention. The neighborhood was beautiful, tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, children riding bicycles, families walking dogs. The kind of community people dream about, the kind of community my grandchildren deserved, and that's what hurt most. Valerie had built this life, a good life, a stable life, a safe life. She simply chose not to share it with the children she already had. Around noon, I entered a small cafe nearby, pure coincidence, at least at first, then fate intervened because sitting at a corner table was Valerie. My heart jumped into my throat. She hadn't noticed me, thank God. She sat with 2 women, laughing, chatting, drinking coffee, acting normal. I chose a seat far away, trying to remain hidden, trying to stay calm. Then I overheard something that made my blood run cold. One woman smiled. You're such an inspiration. Valerie laughed. Oh, please, no, really, the woman continued. Being a mother isn't easy. Valerie nodded dramatically. Tell me about it. Everyone laughed. Then another woman asked, how old is your son now? 4. Valerie smiled proudly. In my whole world, my hands tightened around my coffee cup. My whole world. Arthur wasn't her world. Emily wasn't her world, Andrea wasn't her world, only the new child, only the replacement. The conversation continued, and then came the sentence I'll never forget. One woman asked, do you think you'll have more children? Valerie smiled. Maybe too quickly, maybe too easily. Then she answered, I don't know, Liam might be enough. Liam, the little boy's name. But that wasn't what shocked me. What shocked me was what she didn't say. She didn't say she already had 3 other children. She didn't say she was a mother of 4. She didn't say anything. She allowed everyone to believe Liam was her only child, the only child she had ever loved, the only child she had ever raised, the only child who mattered. The pain of that realization was indescribable. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream, how dare you erase them? How dare you erase Arthur? How dare you erase Emily? How dare you erase Andrea? But I stayed seated because emotions create mistakes, and I needed facts, not explosions. The women eventually left. Valerie remained behind. Checking her phone, smiling, relaxed, carefree. Then she pulled something from her purse, a photograph. I couldn't see clearly, but I recognized the edges immediately, an old family picture. My pulse accelerated. Was it finally a picture of her older children? Was there still guilt, still regret, still love? Slowly she looked at the photo, for several seconds, then sighed, not sadly, not emotionally, just casually. Then she tore it in half. I froze. Actually froze, the pieces fell into a trash bin beside her table, and she walked away just like that. No hesitation, no tears, nothing. The moment she disappeared, I rushed over, my heart pounding, hands shaking. The photograph pieces were still there. I pulled them out and nearly collapsed because the picture wasn't random. It wasn't old friends, it wasn't relatives, it was Arthur, only Arthur, around 6 years old, smiling, holding a soccer trophy. The picture had once stood on Valerie's apartment shelf. I remembered taking it. I remembered that day. I remembered how proud she had seemed. And now, she had ripped it apart like it meant nothing, like he meant nothing. Tears blurred my vision. I carefully collected every piece, every tiny piece, as if somehow I could repair more than just a photograph. That evening I flew home, emotionally destroyed, but carrying something far more valuable than evidence. I carried certainty. Absolute certainty. Valerie had not forgotten her children, she remembered them perfectly, and somehow. That made everything worse because forgetting is accidental. What she was doing was intentional, and when I finally discovered the reason behind her actions, the reason she had erased her past, the truth would shock everyone, including me. For weeks after returning from Colorado, I couldn't stop thinking about that photograph. Arthur's photograph, the one Valerie had torn apart without hesitation. People always say actions speak louder than words. If that's true, then Valerie's actions were screaming. The worst part wasn't the anger, it wasn't even the betrayal, it was the certainty. For years I had hoped there was some explanation, some secret, some hidden reason, something, anything. But after Colorado, that hope was dying, and yet life had one more surprise waiting for me. A surprise hidden inside an old cardboard box. It happened during spring cleaning. The children were at school, the house was quiet. I was organizing old paperwork in the attic when I found a dusty storage box. At first it seemed ordinary, just old bills, tax documents, school forms, nothing important. Then I noticed a familiar handwriting, Valerie's. Immediately my heart skipped. I carefully pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, never opened, never mailed. My name was written on the front, Mom, just that, nothing else. My hands started shaking. I almost didn't open it. Part of me was afraid, afraid of what I might discover, afraid of what I might finally understand, but curiosity won. Slowly, I unfolded the paper inside and began reading. The letter wasn't long, but every sentence felt heavier than the last. Mom, if you're reading this, then things probably didn't work out the way I hoped. I'm tired, tired of struggling, tired of being responsible for everyone, tired of feeling trapped. Sometimes I look at my life and wonder what would have happened if I had made different choices. Different choices. The words immediately disturbed me. I kept reading. I love my children, but sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people need a second chance, a fresh start, a new beginning. My stomach tightened. Fresh start, the exact phrase from her checklist, the exact phrase from Colorado. I continued reading. Maybe one day they'll understand. Maybe one day you'll understand. I don't want to spend my entire life paying for mistakes I made when I was young. I deserve happiness too. The letter ended there. No signature, no explanation, nothing, just silence. I sat there staring at the paper, unable to move, unable to breathe, because for the first time I understood something. Valerie didn't see herself as a villain, not at all. In her mind, she was the victim, the one who deserved freedom, the one who deserved another chance, the one who deserved happiness, and somewhere along the way, my grandchildren had become obstacles, obstacles she believed she could simply leave behind. Oh God. That realization hurt more than I expected, because monsters are easy to understand. Selfish people are much harder, especially when they're your own child. That evening I sat alone in the kitchen, the letter resting beside me. The words replaying again and again. I deserve happiness too. What about Arthur? What about Emily? What about Andrea? Didn't they deserve happiness? Didn't they deserve stability? Didn't they deserve a mother? Apparently not. At least not in Valerie's version of the story. Days later, another shock arrived, this time from an attorney's office. A certified letter, official, legal, unexpected. I opened it immediately. My eyes widened, then widened even more. Because the letter mentioned a name I hadn't heard in years. My late father, the children's great-grandfather. According to the documents, a long-forgotten investment property had dramatically increased in value. A legal review was underway. Potential heirs were being identified, and the estimated inheritance amount made my hands tremble. Several $1 million. Oh no. Suddenly dozens of memories came rushing back. Conversations, questions. Curious remarks Valerie had made years earlier. Comments I had ignored. Comments about family property. Comments about inheritance. Comments about money. My pulse accelerated, fast, very fast. Because an impossible thought was forming inside my head. What if Colorado wasn't the whole story? What if Valerie's sudden interest in rebuilding her image wasn't about love? What if someone had informed her about the inheritance? And what if the children she erased were suddenly valuable again? The possibility seemed absurd, terrifying, and yet, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense, but I had no proof, not yet, unfortunately. Proof was already on its way, and when it arrived, everything would change. 3 months passed. Life returned to normal, or at least as normal as our lives could be. Arthur was now becoming a young man. Emily had discovered a love for books. Andrea never stopped talking. It's never, not even for 5 minutes. The house was alive again, not perfect, but alive. The children laughed more often, smiled more often, dreamed more often. And for the first time in years, I thought maybe the worst was behind us. I was wrong, very wrong, because on a Tuesday afternoon, 13 years after Valerie disappeared, The phone rang. At first, I ignored it. Then it rang again and again. And again, something felt strange, persistent, urgent. Finally, I answered. Hello, silence. A few seconds passed, then a familiar voice spoke, a voice I hadn't heard in 13 years. Mom, the cup slipped from my hand, crash. Coffee exploded across the kitchen floor. My entire body froze. No, impossible. Not after 13 years, not now, not like this. Mom, the voice came again, older but unmistakable. Valerie, my legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the counter for support. Neither of us spoke, not at first. The silence felt enormous. Finally, she spoke. I know this is a shock. A shock, that was one way to describe it. You disappeared. My voice sounded colder than I intended. You vanished. She inhaled sharply. I know, no, my hands trembled. You don't know. More silence. Then she said something that instantly raised my suspicions. I want to see the children, straight to the point. No apology, no explanation, no remorse, just that. I want to see the children. Every alarm bell inside my head started ringing. Loudly, very loudly. Why now? Why after 13 years? Why today? I glanced toward the inheritance documents sitting on the kitchen table, and suddenly my stomach dropped. Oh no, no, please no, surely not. Why? I asked quietly. Valerie hesitated, then answered. Because I'm their mother. The words almost made me laugh. Mother, the title she'd abandoned, the title she'd erased. The title she'd ignored for 13 years. Now suddenly she wanted it back. No, something wasn't right. Something felt terribly wrong. I kept my voice calm. Why now? Another pause, longer this time, too long, then came the answer. I've made mistakes, mistakes. Interesting choice of words, not abandonment, not betrayal, mistakes. I stared at the inheritance papers again. And suddenly everything connected. The timing, the phone call, the sudden interest, the urgency. The coincidence was simply too large. My heart sank because I already knew, deep down I already knew, this wasn't about love. This wasn't about regret. This wasn't about motherhood. This was about something else, something much bigger, something worth millions. And if I was right, then Valerie's return wasn't the beginning of healing. It was the beginning of a battle. A battle that would eventually lead us into a courtroom. A battle that would expose secrets buried for over a decade. A battle that would force my grandchildren to face the woman who abandoned them. And when Valerie finally revealed what she truly wanted, even I wasn't prepared for how far she was willing to go to get it. The call changed everything. For 13 years, Valerie had been a ghost, a memory, a wound. A name nobody wanted to say out loud. Then suddenly, she was real again, living, breathing, calling, wanting something. Funny how quickly old scars can start hurting again. For 3 days after that phone call, I told nobody. Not Arthur, not Emily, not Andrea, nobody. I needed time, time to think, time to understand, time to figure out what Valerie truly wanted. Because every instinct I had was screaming the same warning, be careful, very careful. The inheritance documents remained on my kitchen table. Every time I looked at them, my stomach twisted. Millions of dollars, enough money to change lives, enough money to motivate people. Enough money to bring someone back after 13 years. The timing wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. On the 4th day, Valerie called again. This time I answered immediately. Mom. Her voice sounded nervous. Good, she should be nervous. You want something? Silence, then a sigh, a long sigh. Can we meet? No, the answer came instantly, too instantly. She sounded hurt. I just want to talk. You had 13 years to talk. Another silence. Then she lowered her voice. I deserve a chance. That sentence nearly made me laugh. A chance, a chance. What about Arthur? What chance did he get? What chance did Emily get? What chance did Andrea get? I clenched the phone tighter. You don't get to decide that. Mom, no. For the first time in years, anger escaped. Real anger, the kind I've kept buried. The kind mothers aren't supposed to feel toward their children. You vanished. My voice shook. You disappeared. More silence. You left 3 children wondering if they were unlovable. I heard her breathing, uneven, shaky. Then something unexpected happened. Valerie started crying, actually crying, at least it sounded real. Oh God, her voice cracked. I know, no, I answered coldly. You know words. I paused, then continued. They know pain. The call ended shortly afterward, but it wasn't over, not even close. Because the next afternoon, something happened that none of us expected. A car pulled into the driveway. I noticed it through the window. Black SUV, out-of-state plates. Immediately my heart stopped. No, 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 please tell me she didn't. But she had. The driver's door opened. Valerie stepped out. For a moment I couldn't breathe. 13 years, and there she was, standing in front of my house. The same house she'd left her children in all those years ago. Oh God. My legs felt weak. I rushed outside before the children could see. What are you doing here? Valerie looked nervous, really nervous. Her confidence from Colorado was gone. Her expensive clothes couldn't hide it. Neither could her makeup. She looked scared. Good, you wouldn't meet me. So you show up anyway? Tears appeared immediately. I missed them. The words felt rehearsed, practiced, prepared. I wasn't buying it. Not yet, maybe not ever. Go home. Her face fell. Please, no, please, no. Then suddenly the front door opened. My blood ran cold. Arthur, oh no, 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 not like this. Arthur stepped onto the porch. At first he looked confused, then he froze, completely froze. The color vanished from his face. Valerie turned slowly. Their eyes met, and the entire world seemed to stop. Neither spoke, not immediately. The silence felt endless, heavy, painful, unbearable. Arthur was 20 now, tall, strong, confident. But in that moment, I saw the little boy who used to wait by windows. The little boy who checked mailboxes. The little boy who wrote birthday letters that were never answered. Valerie started crying, hard. Arthur, his jaw tightened, nothing else, just silence. Arthur, she took one step forward. He took one step back, the movement nearly broke her, and honestly, I understood why, because for 13 years she had imagined this moment, the reunion, the forgiveness, the healing, the happy ending, but real life doesn't work that way. Real life remembers, real life keeps score, real life leaves scars. Arthur finally spoke, one sentence, that's all. Why are you here? Valerie sobbed. To see you. No, his voice remained calm, dangerously calm. Why are you really here? Oh, the question hit hard, very hard. Even Valerie looked shaken. Because I love you, Arthur laughed, actually laughed, not happy laughter, broken laughter, the kind that hurts to hear. You love me? He shook his head in disbelief. Incredible. Valerie wiped tears away. Arthur, no. For the first time, emotion exploded from him. Years of emotion, years of hurt, years of abandonment, all at once. Do you know how many birthdays you missed? His voice rose. Do you know how many nights Emily cried? Another step forward. Do you know how many times Andrea sat by the window? Valerie couldn't answer, not a single word. Arthur continued, you don't know. More tears appeared, not just Valerie's, mine too, because these weren't questions, they were wounds, old wounds finally speaking. Then came the sentence that shattered everyone. Do you know what Grandma told us? Valerie looked up, confused. Arthur's voice broke. She told us you loved us. A tear rolled down his face. Even when we stopped believing it. Silence, absolute silence. Then Arthur whispered. She defended you, more tears, every single time. Valerie collapsed emotionally, completely. Her shoulders shook, her breathing became uneven, but Arthur wasn't finished, not even close. Because 13 years of pain doesn't disappear in 5 minutes, and what he said next would change everything. Not just for Valerie, not just for me, for the entire family, because for the first time, the truth was finally coming out. The whole truth, and Valerie wasn't prepared to hear it. The silence felt endless. Valerie stood in the driveway, tears streamed down her face. Arthur stood on the porch, his chest rising and falling, his hands clenched into fists. And I stood between them, not knowing whether I was witnessing the beginning of healing or the final collapse of what little remained of our family. The afternoon wind moved softly through the trees. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance. Cars passed on the street. Life continued normally, yet for us, everything had stopped. Arthur stared directly at Valerie. His eyes were filled with years of pain, years of unanswered questions, years of disappointment, years of broken promises. And now, for the first time in 13 years, the person responsible was standing right in front of him. No phone, no letter, no excuse, no escape, just the truth, or at least, the opportunity to tell it. Valerie wiped tears from her face. Arthur, her voice trembled. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Arthur laughed bitterly. Ha, the sound sent chills through me because there was no joy in it, only hurt, deep hurt. The kind that never fully leaves. You don't, the answer came instantly. Valerie flinched as though he'd physically struck her, but Arthur continued. And that's the problem, she frowned, confused. What do you mean? Arthur stepped down from the porch, one step, then another, slowly approaching, not aggressively, not angrily, just determined to finally be heard. You keep talking about forgiveness. He shook his head. You keep talking about mistakes. Another step, you keep talking about yourself. Valerie opened her mouth, then closed it, because for once she had no defense, no explanation, no prepared speech. Nothing. Arthur pointed toward the house. You left 3 children behind. His voice cracked. 3. Valerie sobbed softly. I know, no, Arthur interrupted, his voice louder now. You don't know. The words hit hard, very hard. Then he said something that immediately brought tears to my eyes. Do you know what happened after you left? Valerie stared at him, speechless. Arthur nodded slowly. Of course you don't. His eyes became glassy, shiny with tears. You weren't there. Oh God, the pain in those words. I could feel it. Valerie could too. She lowered her head, ashamed, for the first time since arriving, actually ashamed. Arthur continued. You weren't there when Emily cried every night. Another tear slid down his cheek. You weren't there when Andrea had nightmares. Valerie's shoulders shook. You weren't there when Grandma skipped meals so we could eat. That one hit me unexpectedly. My chest tightened because it was true. There had been nights, many nights, when I quietly told the children I wasn't hungry, when in reality, there simply wasn't enough food. Valerie looked horrified. Mom, I looked away. I couldn't look at her, not then. Arthur wasn't finished, not even close. You weren't there when I got sick. His voice cracked. You weren't there when I graduated. Another tear. You weren't there when I got my first job. Another. You weren't there when Emily won her school award. More tears. You weren't there again. You weren't there again. You weren't there again. Each repetition felt like a hammer, each one heavier than the last. Valerie collapsed onto her knees. Actually collapsed, sobbing broken, but Arthur didn't stop, because 13 years of silence had finally ended, and silence, once broken, rarely returns quietly. Then the front door opened. Everyone turned. Emily, my sweet Emily. Now 18 years old, she stood frozen in the doorway. Clearly she'd heard everything. Oh no, I wasn't ready for this. Neither was Valerie, neither was Arthur. But life rarely asks permission. Emily stepped outside, slowly, carefully. Valerie stared at her, a mixture of hope and terror crossing her face. Emily, the name barely escaped her lips. Emily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied Valerie, like a stranger, which in many ways she was. The silence stretched, then Emily asked a question, one simple question, a question that changed everything. Why now? Valerie blinked. What? Why now? Emily repeated, calmly, firmly. Why today? No answer. Why this year? Still nothing. Why after 13 years? Valerie looked trapped, cornered, afraid, because unlike Arthur, Emily wasn't speaking from anger, she was speaking from logic, and logic can be far more dangerous. I wanted to reconnect. Emily immediately shook her head. No, the answer came too quickly, too confidently. No, Valerie looked stunned. Emily folded her arms. You didn't wake up one morning after 13 years and suddenly decide to reconnect. Her voice remained calm. Controlled, dangerously controlled. Something happened. Valerie's face changed, just slightly, a tiny reaction. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I did, and so did Emily. The realization hit us both at exactly the same moment. Something had happened, something important. Emily took another step forward. Tell the truth. Valerie looked away. A terrible sign, a very terrible sign, because guilty people often avoid eye contact. Emily noticed too, her eyes narrowed. What happened? Silence. Then suddenly another voice joined the conversation. Oh, everyone turned. Andrea, standing behind Emily, the youngest, the one who had been barely old enough to remember, and yet somehow the one who remembered the most. She walked slowly toward Valerie, studying her carefully. Valerie began crying again. Andrea, the name trembled in her voice. Andrea stopped a few feet away, then tilted her head slightly, confused, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then she asked the question nobody expected. Not Arthur, not Emily, not me, only Andrea. Did you come back because of the money? The world stopped, completely, absolutely stopped. Valerie froze, her face went white, pure white. The color vanished instantly. Oh my God, my heart started pounding, fast, very fast, because that reaction told us everything. Everything. Arthur noticed, Emily noticed, I noticed, and most importantly, Andrea noticed. The silence became unbearable. Then Andrea whispered, I knew it. Valerie's eyes widened. No, but the denial sounded weak, very weak, unconvincing, almost desperate. Andrea's eyes filled with tears, not loud tears, not dramatic tears. The quiet kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that come from disappointment, not surprise, because somehow she had already suspected. You heard about the inheritance. Valerie shook her head rapidly. No, another lie, and everyone knew it. Arthur's jaw tightened, Emily's face hardened. I felt sick, physically sick, because for years I had feared exactly this. Feared that money had brought her back, feared that the inheritance had changed everything. And now, the truth was standing right in front of us. Breathing, crying, lying, Valerie looked around desperately, searching for support, searching for someone to believe her, but nobody spoke, nobody moved, nobody rescued her. Then Arthur finally broke the silence. One sentence, one devastating sentence, one sentence that cut deeper than any accusation. If there was no inheritance, he swallowed hard, his voice shaking. Would you still be here? The question hung in the air, heavy, painful, impossible. Valerie opened her mouth, then closed it, opened it again, then closed it again. No answer came, not a single word. Because some questions reveal the truth before they're ever answered. And in that moment, the silence told us everything. But none of us realized that the worst revelation was still coming, because 2 days later, a lawyer would arrive at my front door carrying documents, official documents, documents that would prove Valerie had been planning something for much longer than any of us imagined, and when those papers were finally opened, the battle for our family would truly begin. For 2 days, nobody in the house spoke about Valerie, not directly, not openly, not honestly, but she was everywhere, in every room, in every thought, in every silence. Ha. Funny how someone can disappear for 13 years and still dominate a house without even being inside it. Arthur buried himself in work. Emily buried herself in books. Andrea pretended nothing had happened, and me. I sat at my kitchen table staring at inheritance documents and wondering how much damage one person could cause. The answer, unfortunately, was a lot. On the second morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Neither were the children. When I opened the door, a man in a gray suit stood there carrying a leather briefcase. Professional, serious, uncomfortable. The kind of person who only arrives when something important is about to happen. Mrs. Alina Vance, yes, he offered a business card. My name is Daniel Mercer, attorney. Immediately my stomach tightened. Oh, the attorney glanced toward the house. May I come in? I already knew I wasn't going to like whatever happened next, but I stepped aside. Of course, 20 minutes later, all four of us sat around the dining table. Arthur, Emily, Andrea, me, and Mr. Mercer. The attorney opened his briefcase, removed a thick folder, then adjusted his glasses. The room felt unusually warm, or maybe that was just my nerves. Mrs. Vance, I represent the estate handling your family's inheritance review. Nobody spoke, the attorney continued. There have been recent inquiries regarding beneficiaries. My heart immediately dropped because I already knew where this was heading. I just didn't want to hear it. The attorney slid several documents across the table. My hands started shaking before I even touched them. Then he spoke the words I dreaded most. Your daughter contacted the estate nearly 18 months ago. Silence. Complete silence. Arthur's face hardened instantly. Emily stopped blinking. Andrea stared at the papers. 18 months, not weeks, not months, 18 months, long before she called, long before she showed up. Long before her emotional reunion attempt. Oh no, 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 no. The room suddenly felt smaller, much smaller. I slowly looked up. Are you saying Valerie knew about the inheritance? The attorney nodded. Yes, the answer landed like a bomb. Andrea looked away immediately. Arthur laughed bitterly. A terrible sound, ha, not amusement, pain, pure pain. Emily spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. When did she find out? The attorney checked his notes. Approximately 18 months ago. Arthur stood up so quickly his chair nearly fell backward. Unbelievable. His voice trembled, not from fear, from anger, years of anger. She knew. Nobody answered, because there was nothing to say. She knew. The attorney wasn't finished, not even close. He removed another folder, thicker, heavier, more dangerous. There's something else. Oh God, there always is. The attorney placed several copies on the table, then quietly said, Your daughter filed legal inquiries regarding beneficiary rights. Nobody moved, nobody breathed, nobody spoke. I stared at him. What does that mean? His expression became cautious, very cautious. As part of her inquiry, she requested information regarding potential distribution structures. Arthur frowned. What does that mean in normal English? The attorney sighed. Then answered directly, It means she was trying to determine how much money she could receive. The room exploded, not literally, emotionally. Arthur slammed his hand against the table. Emily started crying. Andrea looked physically sick. And honestly, so did I, because now there was proof, not suspicion, not theory, proof. Valerie had known about the inheritance long before she called, long before she cried, long before she said she missed her children. The timing wasn't a coincidence. It never had been. The attorney waited for the room to settle, then delivered one final blow. The inquiry specifically mentioned reconnecting with estranged family members. Oh my God, nobody said anything. Because nobody needed to. The implication was obvious, painfully obvious. Valerie wasn't rebuilding relationships. She was rebuilding eligibility. The distinction mattered a lot, and for the first time, even I stopped searching for excuses. Because there weren't any left, only facts, cold facts. The attorney eventually gathered his documents and left, but before leaving, he gave one warning, a warning none of us expected. If legal disputes arise, emotions will become evidence. Then he walked away, leaving us alone with a mountain of heartbreak and a terrifying question. What exactly was Valerie planning? Unfortunately, we were about to find out. Because that evening, a second letter arrived, and unlike the attorney's documents, this one came directly from Valerie herself. The envelope sat on the kitchen table for nearly 3 hours. Nobody touched it. Nobody wanted to. Valerie's handwriting covered the front. The sight alone made my chest tighten. Ha, amazing how a few words on paper can make your hands shake. Arthur refused to look at it. Emily stared at it constantly. Andrea wanted to throw it in the trash. Honestly, I understood all three reactions. Eventually, curiosity won. It always does. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, 6 pages long. The room became silent as I began reading aloud. Dear Mom, I know everyone hates me. I know I deserve that. The opening sounded promising for a moment, then things changed quickly. The next paragraphs were filled with explanations. Excuses, justifications, rationalizations, everything except accountability. She wrote about feeling trapped, feeling overwhelmed, feeling unhappy, feeling lost, feeling exhausted, feeling misunderstood. Page after page, feeling. But very little about Arthur, very little about Emily, very little about Andrea. I kept reading. The children listened, their faces growing colder with every paragraph. Then came a sentence that immediately made Arthur stand up. I never intended to hurt anyone. What? Arthur snapped. What? I looked at him. His eyes burned with anger. You disappear for 13 years and call that not hurting anyone? Nobody answered. Because nobody could, I continued reading. Valerie described her new life, her husband, her home, her son. Every detail felt like another knife, not because she found happiness, because she found happiness by abandoning others. Then came the worst paragraph. The paragraph that changed everything. If I made mistakes, I've already paid for them emotionally. I've suffered every day. Arthur laughed again, that awful laugh, the one that sounded broken, the one that sounded defeated, the one that sounded angry. Emotionally, he shook his head. We were children. Nobody spoke, because he was right, completely right. The room remained silent as I continued reading. Toward the end, Valerie finally mentioned the inheritance. Not directly, of course not, but indirectly, carefully, strategically. She wrote, I hope our family can come together before future decisions are made. Future decisions. Interesting phrase, very interesting. Emily noticed immediately. So there it is. Her voice was calm, too calm, the calm people use when they're deeply hurt. Andrea nodded. She wants something. Arthur folded his arms. Obviously. Then we reached the final page, the final paragraph. The final attempt. I miss you all. I want another chance. I hope someday we can be a family again. Valerie, the letter ended. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Several seconds passed, then a minute, then another. Finally, Andrea broke the silence. Do you believe her? The question hung in the air, heavy, complicated, painful. I looked at each grandchild, one by one, Arthur, Emily, Andrea, 3 children who had become extraordinary despite everything. 3 children who had survived abandonment, 3 children who owed Valerie nothing. And yet, a small part of me still wanted to believe there was some humanity left inside my daughter, some regret, some guilt, some love. But before I could answer, Arthur spoke, quietly, firmly, with absolute certainty. If she really wanted to be a family, he looked at the letter, then looked at us. She would have come back before there was money involved. Nobody argued. Because nobody could. The truth was sitting right there in the room. Painful, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Yet none of us realized that Valerie was already preparing her next move. A much bigger move. A move that would drag all of us into a legal battle. A move that would force long-buried secrets into the open. And a move that would ultimately reveal the real reason she abandoned her children all those years ago. When that truth finally surfaced, even Valerie's strongest supporters would struggle to defend her, because some betrayals are unforgivable, and some choices follow you forever. The legal hearing was scheduled 6 weeks later, 6 weeks. 42 days of tension, 42 days of waiting, 42 days of wondering what Valerie would do next. Sometimes waiting is harder than the battle itself. The entire family felt it. Arthur tried to stay focused on work. Emily threw herself into college applications. Andrea pretended everything was normal, but none of us were fooling anyone. The storm was coming, and everyone knew it. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray, appropriate weather, at least it felt that way. I sat quietly in the courthouse hallway, my hands folded in my lap, my heart racing, not because of the money no longer mattered. Not really. What mattered was the truth. The truth had been hidden for 13 years. Today it would finally stand in the light. Valerie arrived 20 minutes later. When I first saw her, I barely recognized her, not physically, emotionally. The confidence she'd carried in Colorado was gone. The certainty was gone. The carefully crafted image was gone. All that remained was a nervous woman facing the consequences of her choices. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Neither of us smiled, neither of us spoke. What was there left to say? Eventually, everyone entered the hearing room. Lawyers, estate representatives, family members, witnesses. The atmosphere felt heavy, very heavy. The estate attorney began first. Facts, dates, documents, records, cold evidence, the kind that doesn't care about feelings. One document after another painted a clear picture. Valerie's inquiries, Valerie's requests, Valerie's attempts to determine inheritance eligibility. Valerie's efforts to reestablish contact. All of it happened after she learned about the money, every single piece. The timeline spoke for itself. Even Valerie looked uncomfortable hearing it presented that way. Because facts have a way of stripping away excuses. Then came the moment nobody expected. The estate attorney called Arthur to speak. Arthur stood slowly, calmly, confidently. The little boy who once waited by windows was gone. In his place stood a man, a strong man, a good man, a man I couldn't have been more proud of. He sat down, adjusted the microphone, and looked directly at Valerie, not with hatred, not with anger, just honesty, pure honesty. The attorney asked a simple question. Can you describe the impact of your mother's absence? The room became silent. Arthur inhaled deeply, then answered, I can. He paused, long pause, then continued. When people hear abandonment, they imagine one bad day. His voice remained steady. But abandonment isn't one day. Nobody moved, nobody interrupted. Arthur continued. It's thousands of days. A few tears appeared in Valerie's eyes. Arthur kept speaking. It's every birthday, another pause, every Christmas, another, every school event, another, every achievement, another, every failure. The room felt completely still. Arthur wasn't attacking her. That somehow made it more powerful because he wasn't speaking from revenge, he was speaking from truth, and truth is hard to argue with. Then came the sentence that changed everything. My grandmother raised us. His voice cracked slightly. The first sign of emotion. She gave us food when she had very little. I lowered my head, embarrassed, touched, overwhelmed. Arthur smiled softly. My grandmother taught us responsibility. Another smile. My grandmother taught us kindness. More tears. My grandmother taught us forgiveness. Valerie started crying openly, hard, very hard. Then Arthur looked directly at her and said something nobody expected. I don't hate you. The room froze. Even Valerie looked shocked. Arthur nodded slowly. I did. His voice softened. For years. Another pause. Then I got older. He looked toward me, then Emily, then Andrea, finally back to Valerie. And I realized hate gives abandoned people a second prison. Oh, so the room became emotional immediately. Arthur continued, I don't hate you. His voice trembled, but I can't pretend nothing happened. Valerie covered her mouth. Crying, unable to stop, Arthur's final words landed harder than anything else. You left. Simple, direct, true, you left. The hearing ended several hours later. The legal decision wasn't dramatic. There was no shocking twist. No movie-style surprise. The inheritance remained protected according to established family guidelines and prior estate provisions. But honestly, that wasn't the important part. The important part happened afterward, because for the first time in 13 years. Valerie stopped defending herself and started listening. The hearing was over. The money issue was settled. The lawyers were gone. The documents were signed, and somehow, none of that felt important anymore. The truly important moment happened outside the courthouse. Just 5 people standing together, me, Arthur, Emily, Andrea, and Valerie. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The silence wasn't hostile, just uncertain. Like standing at the edge of a bridge nobody knew how to cross. Finally, Valerie stepped forward, slowly, carefully, as though afraid the moment might shatter. I don't expect forgiveness. Her voice trembled. For once, there were no speeches. No excuses, no explanations, just honesty. I don't deserve it. Nobody interrupted because she was right. She wasn't finished. I spent years convincing myself I had reasons. Tears filled her eyes. I told myself I deserved happiness. Another tear. I told myself I deserved a fresh start. More tears. I told myself a lot of things. The pain in her voice felt genuine, painfully genuine. Then came the hardest sentence. The sentence she'd avoided for 13 years. I abandoned my children. Silence, absolute silence. No excuses attached, no qualifications, no blame, just truth. And sometimes truth arrives very late, but it still matters. Valerie looked at each of her children. One by one, Arthur, Emily, Andrea, then she whispered, I'm sorry. Not the polished version, not the lawyer-approved version, not the convenient version, the real version, the painful version. The version that cost something. Nobody immediately responded, because some wounds don't heal instantly, and forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a process, a long process, sometimes a lifelong process. Then something unexpected happened. Andrea stepped forward first. Of course it was Andrea, the child with the biggest heart, the child who somehow remained hopeful despite everything. She didn't hug Valerie, not yet. Instead she asked, Are you leaving again? The question nearly destroyed everyone. Valerie broke down immediately, crying harder than before. No, her answer came instantly. No, Andrea nodded slowly, studying her, evaluating her. Then she quietly said, Good, not forgiveness. Not reconciliation, just a beginning, a very small beginning. Emily stepped forward next. Her expression remained cautious, protective, wise. I don't know if I can trust you. Valerie nodded. I understand, and it may take years. Another nod. I understand. Emily looked at her for several seconds, then replied, At least you're finally telling the truth. Again, not forgiveness, but a beginning. Then came Arthur. The moment everyone feared, the moment everyone waited for. Arthur approached slowly. Valerie looked terrified, completely terrified, as though she expected him to walk away, maybe forever. Instead, he stopped directly in front of her. The silence stretched long, very long, then he spoke. I spent half my life waiting for you, Valerie cried quietly. Arthur continued, the other half learning how to live without you. The truth of that statement hit hard, very hard. Then he smiled, a small smile, sad but genuine. I'm not that little boy anymore. Valerie nodded through tears. I know. Arthur took a deep breath, then offered something extraordinary, not forgiveness, not yet, something harder. Something more valuable, a chance, not because she deserved one, but because he deserved peace. We start slow. Valerie stared at him, almost unable to believe what she was hearing. Arthur continued, very slow, more tears. No promises, more tears. No guarantees, more tears. But maybe someday, his voice softened, maybe someday we'll figure out what comes next. Valerie broke completely. Relief, gratitude, regret, everything at once. And for the first time in 13 years, she wasn't asking for money, she wasn't asking for rights, she wasn't asking for anything. She was simply standing there, listening, accepting, learning. The months that followed weren't perfect, far from it. There were difficult conversations, painful memories, awkward visits, moments of anger, moments of grief, moments of disappointment, but there were also new moments, small moments, important moments, coffee conversations, birthday cards, phone calls, family dinners, tiny pieces of trust slowly being rebuilt, not because the past disappeared, it never did, but because healing doesn't erase scars, it teaches you how to live with them. A year later, our family gathered for Christmas, the same holiday that once felt empty, the same holiday that once carried so much pain. This time things felt different, not perfect, just honest, and honestly, that was enough. I sat quietly watching everyone laugh around the dinner table. Arthur telling stories, Emily teasing Andrea, Andrea laughing too loudly. Ha, some things never change, and Valerie sitting among them, not as a hero, not as a victim. Simply as a woman trying to do better than she once did. I looked around the room, at the family we nearly lost, at the children who grew into remarkable adults, at the second chance none of us expected, and I realized something. Family isn't defined by blood, family isn't defined by mistakes, family isn't even defined by the past. Family is defined by who stays, who shows up, who chooses each other again and again, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. And as the laughter filled the room that Christmas night, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was finally honest, and sometimes honesty is where healing begins.